So first of all, thank you very much for joining our Lunch and Learn. I'm really pleased to have a guest speaker today, who is Verónica Celis Vergara, or Vero, and I have been practicing. Now, Vero is a recognized sustainability leader and MIT top innovator under 35. She's the founder and CEO of Valumia, a platform helping startups and SMEs track and manage their environmental and social impact. With a background in architecture and a master's in landscape design and an MBA, Vero's work bridges design, technology, and sustainability. She's previously co-founded Enlight Aid, a tech for good company that brought real-time transparency to global donations. Now, originally from Chile, she's based in Barcelona. Be so cool to be based in Barcelona, and brings global experience and a bold vision for how data and innovation can drive real world change. So I'm super excited for this today. The way it will work, it will be we'll run the webinar, which will be very interactive. I know Vera's got her Menti all set up for about 45 minutes. Please, if you've got questions along the way, please raise your hand or pop the questions in the chat. I'll make sure those get answered as we progress. There'll obviously be opportunity at the end as well. If you've got any technical issues, please do pop any questions in the Q&A. We do have the team in the background who can help out. And on that note, we'll spotlight you, Vero. I want to sit back, have my water, and enjoy. Thank you so much.
Thank you for the invitation, and thanks everyone for taking a time of your lunch to actually not just eat, but also learn a little bit. So let's get started. We're gonna go quickly through like a little bit extra introduction beyond what Kavita said. Also, then we're gonna cover some risks, regulations, and reporting. What can you do about your supply chain? And a case study. So, well, you already met the two of us. I'm gonna go jump a little bit. Kavita told you already that I'm originally from Chile. What she did not tell you is that even though I'm Latina, I've lived in 6 different countries, the longest period of time in Germany, and now in beautiful Barcelona, enjoying the beach. You should come to the office because like I literally see the ocean from my desk, which is amazing. I've been obsessed with sustainability since the beginning of my career. As Kavita mentioned, I was working first in architecture. So the first focus was on sustainability for the built environment. And later on, I had to expand, or like my curiosity drove me to expand a little bit beyond just buildings and into other things. I have been blessed in my career to do a bunch of firsts. So I was part, for example, of the first sustainable building in Argentina, doing the LEED certification process together with some colleagues. So in practical terms, I helped complete the first sustainable industrial building in the country. I have co-created a real-time transparency platform for donations, which got a lot of interest and some fancy sounding prizes. We had projects in Chile, Peru, Mexico, Kenya, Sierra Leone, Madagascar, and Norway. And for that work, I was recognized by MIT, but also by the Inter-American Development Bank as one of the top innovators of our generation. I published the first sustainability report and metrics for a roller coaster producer. And what am I doing now? Well, as Kavita mentioned, I'm the founder of a platform called Valumia that helps companies focusing mostly on small like SMEs, kind of bring sustainability to their companies, but more specifically, what are the risks and strengths associated to sustainability within your supply chain. And I will try to very quickly during this session to cover why it is important to understand these risks and strengths in your supply chain and why you should be caring. So we're going to start interactively. So we're going to start with some questions. So I will ask you to all please either scan the QR code with your phones, or to go to menti.com and use the code that we have below. I'm going to give you a minute or two to actually scan it, and then I'm going to switch to the presentation, to the Menti presentation, to the interactive presentation. So if I can get like some thumbs up maybe to let me know that you guys are already there, that would be beautiful because I can't see you. give it another minute. Give it another minute. I think maybe I should also like scan it to see like how long it takes. And that way it's a bit easier. Great. So I'm already there. So I'm going to think that you are there too. We have some answers already. So how many suppliers do you have? We have one company that doesn't know. We have 4 there in the 1 to 250 range. The 1 to 250 is actually quite popular at the moment, it seems like. We have 8 people who have answered. Can I get a few more? All right, great. I think we're going to move it to the next question. So I'm going to ask you now, in relationship to your suppliers, what worries you the most? Okay, risk, cost, and reputation. Interesting. Lack of accountability. That's a very interesting one. No trust. Also super interesting. Uncertainty, risk, and cost are the biggest ones. Relationship, reputation. We have 3 people who have answered. And if you're joining later or if you didn't get the QR, you can always join at menti.com and using this code that we see here in the top. Reputation, super interesting one. Reputation I see come over and over. Super interesting. Delays. We're going to talk a little bit about delays as well. Power. I would be interested to know if power in terms of your power to affect your supplier or the power that your supplier has over you. It would be super interesting to know. So you can hit me up and we can talk about that later. I have 5 people who have answered.
We have about 16. So if you can make a judgment when you want to move on, Vero.
All right. So we have like, okay, we have like 16 attendees. Remember, if you didn't join before, you can join at menti.com and use this code. You don't always need the QR code. Be great to have like a few more answers would be fantastic. And then we can jump back to the rest of the presentation. Come on, people. I know you have your hands busy with your food. It's just a little bit interactivity. All right, we're gonna leave it at that. Cost and risk are the biggest factors. Interesting. I think, like BuyingStation can help you a lot with costs. I can help you a lot with risk. So between the two of us, we could have you completely covered here. All right, let's go over some risks, which interestingly enough is one of your biggest concerns. Let's cover that from the beginning. So interestingly enough, the vast majority of companies do not have visibility of the risks within their supply chain. In fact, a whooping 94% of companies don't know what is happening within their supply chain and what risks may affect the operation of their own businesses. So a number that I found incredibly boring, like worrying, not boring, worrying. Think about it like, English is my third language. Sorry, sometimes I have like, cross cables there. But something that worries me a lot is that supply chain disruptions can cost about 10% of annual revenue for companies across the world. So imagine what your business could do if you were able to actually profit from that 10%. How many growth opportunities you could reach, how much you could scale your team, how much more comfortable you would feel within the operation of your business. Let me tell you that I know that we were in the I don't know and 1 to 250 suppliers range within the answers, but on average, SMEs have about 800 suppliers. That means about 9 times more suppliers than you do employees. No wonder why businesses struggle with visualizing the risks within their supply chain. It's pretty logical. If we sometimes struggle with understanding what is going on with the people within our teams, the people that we see every day, either digitally or in our offices, how can we manage knowing what is happening in a pool of factors 9 times bigger than that? One of the worst parts is that we tend to think that stability is the norm. We assume things will remain the same and stable. But as somebody who was born in the country with the biggest earthquakes in the world, I can tell you that this idea of stability is an illusion. Our world is meant to have a shake every once in a while. The only constant is change. And a lot of the times that change is a positive force. Others, that change is a disruption that costs our business a lot. We all understand that the world stopped during COVID. We all remember how supermarkets ran out of toilet paper, flour, and other essentials. I love the French case. So in Germany, where I was living at the time, we were running out of toilet paper and flour. In France, they ran out of wine and condoms, which I always think is
I think it's when you go around the world, it'd be really interesting to know what every country ran out of that. So that's fascinating.
Exactly. I think that says a lot about the French and about the Germans. We tend to forget that the risk of these disruptions happening again and at a different scale caused by different reasons are literally just around the corner. A lot of these disruptions are related to sustainability factors. So every single day, environmental, social, and governance factors play a role in our business, whether we see them or not. I'm not going to pretend to cover all of the risks that your company may face. One, because I don't know all of what your companies are doing just yet. Two, because we don't have enough time to go over every single risk. But let me share some of the recent cases that could have been prevented by visualizing the sustainability indicators of your supply chain. So political instability is a big threat. We have social risks that definitely cannot be ignored. We have data gaps that create these blind spots. That means that we may not be aware of these risks that are happening. And I can tell you that reactive supply chains fail. If you are waiting for a disruption to happen and just then take action, then your business is going to suffer the impact. I have a few very interesting examples. As you know, I used to work for the roller coaster industry, and for example, something related to the political instability. The Ukrainian-Russian war caused that park operators like Disney and others in the Americas could not sell popcorn for about a year because the popcorn oil that they were using, like to have the butter popcorn and caramel popcorn produced in their parks, was actually produced in the Ukraine, and they couldn't have it anymore because of the war. So in this case, a latent conflict, was responsible for about a year of disruption of their their best-selling product, and also the product that had one of the biggest margins for the parks. Another example where it has like something to do more with social factors. Between the 2023 and 2024, the region of Pakistan called Sialkot, and I'm pretty sure I'm butchering that name, which is the responsible region for the production of about 70% of the football balls in the world, faced a huge scandal. The workers in the production facilities in the region were paid far below the local living wage, and the women were paid just a tiny amount, and they were juggling 10 to 14-hour shifts, plus their family responsibilities, which was against the local regulation. So what happened? Some big brands that I will not name here faced consumer boycotts, costing them millions of pounds, but also they had disruptions on the production that could be delivered to their facilities because certain factories that were infringing on those laws had to shut down, making it impossible for them to actually deliver the product. Again, when we think of geopolitical instability, Taiwan is a good example. This instability completely disrupted the semiconductor supply chain between last year and this year. There's a rising tension between Taiwan and China, and that puts at risk about 60% of the world's chips. So if the conflict escalates, that means that pretty much every single company in the electronics and automotive production will have an effect in their business. The potential is of multi-billion-dollar losses if the conflict continues to escalate. Sometimes I get companies who have the feeling or who are producing a service or a digital product, and they tell me, "I have no risk. I'm not buying any things, any physical things." But we could think, for example, of if your company is using digital services such as Monday.com, Wix, or Fiverr. These companies are based in Israel, where if the conflict continues to increase, it may cripple your ability to continue to offer services. This could happen very, very fast. So in 2023 alone, supply chain disruptions threaten close to €1 trillion in the Eurozone alone. Political instability, climate change, and social justice are just some of the top risks to the integrity and reliability of your company's supply chain. And even though they're considered top concerns, as we saw in the beginning, many companies don't have any visibility of those risks within their supply chain because they don't have any of the systems in place to address these risks. As the key responsible people for your organization, because I am assuming that you're mostly in purchasing because of who's inviting you to this event, you have the advantage to choose to make an informed decision to keep track of those potential risks your supply chain is exposed to, and to ensure that you can keep serving your companies, serving your customers and growing your companies. We could spend a whole day talking about specific products that are at risk of stop existing and that have experienced an exponential surge in price in the last 5 years. Cocoa, coffee, rice, wheat, soybeans, bananas, potatoes, olive oil, tea, avocados, almonds, chickpeas, wine, cranberries, scallops, peaches, sardines, and I could name so many more, are some examples of the products that are already affected by climate change. And these are some of the most vulnerable crops. And I don't know about your businesses, but I can tell you that I cannot live without chocolate and avocados. I just can't. That would be a very, very, very sad world. So I think I have planted the seed of fear of what can go wrong if you ignore what's happening around the world with your suppliers in terms of like social, environmental factors. Now let's look at what happens when you don't know, so you fail to report. You may have heard, or you may be aware, that regulations are changing across the world. The European continent is in fact the biggest regulator, having hundreds of laws and requirements related to sustainability factors on the planet. These regulations are structured in 3 verticals, which are sometimes combined. And what I mean with combined is that not only they consider environmental or social, but sometimes they consider environmental and social, or social and governance, and more. So for environmental topics, the regulations that address sustainability within these different sectors consider things like climate change, for example, carbon emissions, water usage, energy efficiency, pollution, resource scarcity, biodiversity, and more. Social factors cover topics like customer satisfaction, data protection, that is a huge one in Europe, GDPR and all, diversity, employee engagement, human rights such as the exposure to modern slavery or child labor. Then there's governance, which are the systems that a company uses to balance stakeholder demands. And when I mean stakeholders, I mean internal and external, such as your employer, employees, customers, suppliers, who's providing your capital, etc. So let's now go back to the Menti. I'll give you the QR for a minute if you still need it. But if you don't, you just, if you already went there, you should be fine. And as always, you can join through menti.com and put the code, which is again at the top of our presentation. And what I would like you to answer is if you can name any sustainability policy, law, or regulation that is related to your supply chain that you're aware of. I know you're eating, so I want to prevent that you fall asleep while you're enjoying your wonderful meal or after this wonderful meal. So this is why I'm trying to keep things interactive. I would love your input. I know that there's 8 of you connected to the Menti. There's 9 now. I love it. Would be amazing to have some answers now.
I think there's 16, there's still 16 here, so hopefully we'll get some through.
Amazing. There's one. Somebody's paying attention. Modern slavery and GDPR, product safety and quality. You're right. Let's have some more. I have faith in you. Modern slavery, very big one. Actually, very big one in the UK. We have 10 people now in the Menti. I love it. Let's get child labor too. Yes, definitely. Do you know any more? Environmental protection? Yes. It's getting interesting. More environmental protection, eco-friendly urban mobility. I've heard of some policies in the scene. Human rights, very important. Modern slavery, health and safety policy, yes, very important. I've had 6 answers so far. I'm going to give you another minute. Climate Change Act, wonderful. Oh, this is new. This is actually new. I didn't know. I can press space and something's gonna happen. Oh, very interesting. I had never done that one before. We have ethical sourcing, yes. All right, and we have more people in the Menti. I love this. There's a new group now. SDGs, yes. All right. You know a lot already. So you're gonna have to tell me later on if I'm boring you with the with the content. All right, let's jump back into the content. Thank you so much for your answers and keep being awake because I'm gonna keep asking you things later on. So let me share some of the regulations that are reshaping supply chain expectations specifically, because you, of course, addressed a lot of topics. For example, the SDGs, there are policies or agreements that we have, but that don't necessarily directly address supply chain. The US, Canada, Australia, China, the UK, Switzerland, Norway, the European Union, and among the European Union, specifically Germany, France, and the Netherlands, among other countries, have specific regulations that require your companies to understand and report Sustainability indicators such as exposure to modern slavery, which was a big topic, water scarcity, biodiversity risks, among many others within your supply chain. So this is specifically to what's happening in your supply chain. So how can you report if you don't have any clarity? Difficult, right? Until a few years ago, these regulations affected large companies alone, but not anymore. Some of these regulations, especially the newer ones coming into place, are affecting SMEs, and other regulations that continue to affect big companies, but require them to report first and second tier suppliers. What is a first tier supplier? The first tier supplier are, as a company, my suppliers. The second tier suppliers are the suppliers of my suppliers. So that means that if I'm an SME that is working with a large customer, the large customer will start to ask me as an SME about my suppliers. And if I'm unable to respond, if I'm unable to provide this data, there's a very big chance that that large company can no longer work with me as an SME. This is happening especially in Germany, very, very strongly in Germany, but there are other regulatory environments where it's like increasingly happening and growing this pressure. So what happens if you can't comply, if you have to report, but you can't comply? It depends. Every time I say it depends, it makes me feel like I'm back at MBA school because it depends is always the answer. But it truly depends. So it depends on the regulation, but some of the worst cases, it could include a significant percentage of your annual global revenue, not just the revenue of the branch or the entity that is in breach of the regulation, but your whole global revenue, which is especially critical for those companies that have operations in multiple countries. So you could be risking up to 10-15% of your annual revenue if you're not able to report on these regulations, such as CS3D or the German Supply Act. This super interesting one is the Norwegian Transparency Act, which covers first and second tier suppliers, but also demands Norwegian companies to provide compensation in cases where there's breach of certain standards, even within their second tier suppliers. So it's a very alive and changing regulatory scenario at the moment. What I'm trying to tell you with this is that knowing and reporting on your supply chain is no longer optional. Not knowing what's going on within your supply chain may expose your business to the risk of being unable to serve your customers because of disruptions. You may lose business if you're unable to provide a larger customer with the information they need to provide the regulator, or you may lose your license to operate if you're unable to provide the right information to the regulator when you are the one who's affected. On top of that, there might be fines. So it's a very scary, it's a very scary world out there. And I don't want to make you feel too afraid. I know this is a Friday and we're gonna, talk about what you can do a little bit later on. But I want to invite you again to the Menti to answer one more question. In relationship to if you have already been asked by a client or regulator to provide information on sustainability related to your supply chain. Yes to both. Yes to a client. Okay. So clients are somehow exerting the biggest pressure for most of us in the answering team. Okay. All right. So client is still the biggest pressure point for you as of now. And some of you have to also provide information to the regulator. Very interesting. We have 8 answers out of 13. And I love like how every time like somebody else jumps on the Menti. Very thankful for that. Okay, I think these are all the answers we're gonna get, and then let's move to the next question. So if you answered yes, information to a client, would you feel comfortable disclosing or like telling what kind of information did you have to provide about your supply chain? It's fine if you don't feel comfortable saying. I'm gonna give you like a minute or two. We're not gonna stretch it too much in case you're not comfortable. But if you are, it would be super interesting if you are asked to about environmental information, or if you're asked about due diligence or about social factors. We're all very shy with these questions. Okay, disposal policies, ISOs, nice. Data sheets, sustainability reports, environmental credentials. This is very interesting. Thank you. CSR, hidden child labor, very tricky one. Check for greenwashing, super important one. Exact statistics, difficult. I feel like we have to do like a follow-up session where you tell me like your struggles like or how you managed to provide this information and where were your pain points. Great. How about to the regulator? That you for those, I think we had two companies that mentioned they had to report something to a regulator. Would you feel comfortable sharing some of the information that you had to, some of the topics that you had to cover? Let's give you a minute or two. I'm gonna give you another second. Data and policies. All right. I know we had one more person who answered that they had to report to regulators. Would you feel comfortable also sharing which topics you had to cover? I'll give you another second. I feel like I need like, some like elevator music in the background for this time. Maybe for the next one we're gonna have like some
Maybe just put your phone on next to it.
For
Oh, you've
sure.
had one? You've had a couple come through.
Yeah, risk assessment and transaction reports. Super interesting. Thank you so much. Okay, let's go back to the presentation and we talked about all the scary portion. Now let's go over what you can do about it so you can actually sleep over the weekend. So in regards to your supply chain, you can do this. You can analyze, you can understand who your suppliers are and how they impact your business, who is critical, who is not so important, who's something that you can easily, like which supplier can you easily replace, which is very, very critical for your business survival. You can centralize the data so you can keep all the data in one place for better visibility and to have like one place that is like your absolute truth of business where what you can use to do some decision making. You should always verify what's happening. You should check for compliance, for risks, for real sustainability signs, not just promises. And you should rate your suppliers. You should be aware of which ones are doing better and worse. And I'm going to help you later with how we could do that. So what you should avoid is you should not lose track of your suppliers. You should know again who they are, what they do, and how critical are they for your business for your business survival. You shouldn't keep that data lying around in emails or in someone's private computer plus some documents on the drive. No, put it in a centralized place. Try to avoid those silos and try to avoid those blind spots. Do not skip the due diligence. Trust is not a strategy. You should verify that your suppliers are meeting basic standards, and you should not ignore ESG risks. Environmental, social, and governance factors can and may very well disrupt your supply chain or discredit your business if you left them unchecked. So let me talk to you a little bit about what we do and how we could help you out. So as Kavita and I mentioned at the beginning, I'm the founder of Valumia, which is a company that helps you do exactly this. So we basically take your transaction data that you share with us. That means the supplier name, the amount of each transaction, the location or the IBAN, which we use to identify and assess each supplier. And we analyze first their publicly stated sustainability commitments across the key ESG areas. So we look at how they are managing their environmental aspects, what their workplace safety policies are, which I know for at least one of you was a topic of concern. Climate change policies, emission reductions, human rights protections, and much, much more. So we then individualize each one of your suppliers and we categorize them based on how they clearly demonstrate sustainability. After that, after this first assessment, and this is automated, so you give the data to the system and then you don't have to worry about it anymore. After that, the system then analyzes their supplier in their geographical context, and they understand mostly social risks, but also some environmental risks, covering topics like, is the supplier that you're working with working in a place that has regulatory quality, rule of law, government effectiveness, or political stability? Are they in an environment that allows them to, or allows you to trust that they can keep providing the services and products that they're giving to you because they meet these criteria? And then the risk of how this, I know this is a concern for you, how exposed are they to modern slavery, to child labor, to corruption, to conflict and violence? Remember how I spoke about the popcorn not long ago? Well, the popcorn industry, which still boggles my mind, was completely disrupted by conflict and violence within the region, like between Russia and Ukraine. Popcorn, right? I wouldn't have thought it. Then also like voice and accountability, like how exposed, like how at risk are your suppliers that civil rights violations are just like are touching them. All of that is analyzed by the system automatically based on your purchase data. Once we have done this, the system also provides you with your top 10 suppliers based on the total spend that you have with them and shows you what their indicators are as well as which actions you should take. So should you be requesting a certificate of an evidence of a claim, for example, if they say that they have an ISO certification, you should probably be requesting that certificate. Or is it a critical supplier, but it has no disclosures in terms of sustainability? Then you should probably conduct an enhanced due diligence. We, of course, have like follow-ups with like targeted questions or contract clauses that you can do as well. And you can always request a full list of your suppliers, but that's a bit of an add-on. Like we want to help you to focus the energy where it matters the most. Like from the analysis that we've done already, we can see that top 10 is usually about 80% of your company spend. So that is where you should put most of your energy. You could replace the 0.001% that you are spending, but this top 10, this 80% of your company spend, you should know what's happening. All right. So now we're going to go into a case study, which is something that I usually do. I usually make it work, but since I know this time you're eating, so you're busy, I did the work for you, so we can go over a very, very, very small portion of that first assessment. Remember, I showed you like this, like the classification of the sustainability commitments of of your suppliers. We're gonna do the same for a real company, a company that I actually happen to love, because I love chocolate. You know that about me already. And this one is a particularly fun company. I have never worked with them. I have no endorsements with them. I have no relationship to this company. I just really like the company, the philosophy, and their product. Their chocolate is delicious, but I have nothing to do with them, just so you know. So the company is called Tony Chocolonely. It's a Dutch company that was founded in 2005 by a journalist who actually sued himself because he discovered that the cocoa industry was inundated with child labor and modern slavery. So he literally sued himself, saying that he was part of a crime in consuming chocolate. It's a very fascinating story. There's a little documentary you should watch. It's super fun. But I can tell you that nothing happened to him in terms of legal. There was a trial and everything, but they couldn't charge him because it wasn't his responsibility. But he decided to change the chocolate industry from within, and he decided to create the first company that provides 100% slavery-free chocolate production and a fair treatment of chocolate farmers, which is why I really like this company. And we're going to use this company for the example. As I mentioned, we're going to classify this like key suppliers of this company by their sustainability commitment. So the best score a supplier could get is an excellent, is a company that has a certified commitment. So this is a supplier that has a verified sustainability metric or metrics. They have certifications and or third-party validations. Something like, let's say their building is a LEED certified building where they're operating and they own it, or they have science-based targets, or they have ISOs, or they have EMAS management systems. This type of certification would qualify this supplier to be a certified commitment, and they would give them an excellent rating. Then there's good companies, suppliers that mention concrete goals. Let's say something like, we are reducing our carbon emissions by 50% by 2030, but they don't have any third-party verification. So they have a concrete goal stated, we know it's there, but nobody else is verifying it. That would get the company a good grade, which is an uncertified commitment. Then an okay supplier would be a supplier that mentions sustainability, that has a reference to it, but that they don't have any concrete measurable commitments. So the classical, we're green, we work sustainably, we recycle, but as externals to that supplier, we don't know how much they recycle or what qualifies as green for them. So this is an okay company. We should always be trying to move towards the excellent grade, of course. And then the worst classification, the poor that you could get, are suppliers that have no commitments disclosed or where there is no information at all. So suppliers that do not share any sustainability related information or who log publicly available information at the time of the analysis. Since we're working with Tony Chocolonely, a chocolate company, we're going to focus on the cocoa industry and upstream and downstream transportation risks. We're going to focus, of course, we know, or it is known, that raw cocoa is sourced mostly from West Africa or Latin America, and we're going to consider key environmental, social, and governance risks, such as biodiversity loss, deforestation, modern slavery, which is a very important one for you, and lack of certifications. We're going to consider, well, I already considered all of those topics, and I looked at these three key suppliers for Tony Chocolonely. One producer of raw cocoa, then one company that moves the cocoa from where it's produced to my facility where I produce my chocolate, and then one company that moves the finished chocolate into where my customers buy it. For the purpose of this analysis, I assume that everything else, let's say milk, sugar, paying my own employees within the facilities of Tony Chocolonely. All of that is solved. All of that is working great. So we're just going to look at those three possible suppliers. I looked into Barry Callebaut, which is a known supplier of Tony Chocolonely. They put this name in particular within their sustainability reporting. So we know this is a real supplier of the company. Barry Callebaut has transparent ESG reporting. They report according to GRI and CDP frameworks. So we know that they have a third-party validation element. They have concrete targets to reduce emissions, to phase out harmful pesticides, and to support farmers with subsidies. They have a very active child labor action plan where they identify and remediate child labor within their supply chain. So they're extremely active there. And they also have a continuous monitoring and remediation processes that uses traceability, satellite monitoring, and due diligence process that ensures that their operation is as good as it can be. And how do I know this? Well, of course, for the purpose of this presentation, I did a desk research for you guys, and I went into their website, but I started looking at real commitments. Like, you have a lot of buzzwords. I've been doing sustainability for many, many years. So I can, of course, understand when there is a certification or not. So Barry Callebaut publishes a sustainability strategy. They have a position on ESG. They're extremely open about it, and there are, for example, keywords that you can find like child labor. Of course, it's not here. Let's go into our position. Yeah. Okay. So if I look into child labor, which is a known problem within the industry, they acknowledge the different declarations, and they have also a plan. So I can even go check exactly what they do in terms of child labor, which is why I would give them for child labor. Like, this is a very long document, we're not going to read it, but believe me when I tell you, I actually went and read it. And so I could tell you that this is a very stable and concrete plan. It's not just me saying, oh, we're not going to have, child labor. There is a plan. They acknowledge how many cases they have had. They acknowledge the different remediation strategies that they have done. And they acknowledge when they still are aware that there are some issues that they need to address. And they recognize that and publish that. So then for the company that moves, and then now we move into a bit of theory, because Tony Chocolonely doesn't publicly say who moves their cocoa to the Netherlands, but I went and searched a little bit until I could find a company that does move cocoa from the Ivory Coast to the Netherlands. So this particular company does mention sustainability, but does not have any clear goals or measurable actions. They do not have any third-party validations or certifications. They don't have any publicly accessible whistleblower protection policy. I'm not entirely sure how many employees they have, but as a freight company, I would assume they have over 50. For any company in the European Union that has at least 50 employees, they are obligated by law to have a whistleblower protection policy and methodology publicly accessible within their website. So I can tell you from the get-go that this company is breaching some social and governance elements. Overall, for this company, I'm not going to go again into the website. You can believe me, but you could go and look it up for yourselves later on, or you can ask me any questions after. Overall, this company has a low transparency and has very weak accountability indicators. Of course, we could debate if the freight company is more important or less important than the cocoa production. That's a conversation that you have to have internally as a business. What is critical to you and what is not? But we know that this company is not. It's not. It could be better. Let's say that it could improve. As I said, I don't know if they have more or less employees but they should have a whistleblower protection policy. Then there's a company that I looked, again, this is a little bit of informed guessing. I found a company within the Netherlands that has does move chocolate within the region, so within Netherlands and to different European areas, and it has trucks that are prepared to move chocolate. This company, in comparison to the previous one, they have science-based targets for the reduction of carbon emissions. They are publicly stated within their company, within their website. They use global standards. They have a publicly available code of conduct and other ESG policies. They are a UN Global Compact signatory, so we know they're publicly committed to human rights, labor, environment, and anti-corruption principles. Like they're not only doing it, but they have a third-party verified, or like they have a third-party commitment, so to speak. They have to report, like with the UN Global Compact, they have to have a little report every year on how they are improving within their practices. And they also state they have certain circular initiatives within their website. So they have energy efficient buildings. They have a high percentage of renewables that are used. There's on-site solar power. So we know already that this company, is making an effort in terms of sustainability. So if I had to rate those three suppliers based on their public information, I would rate Barry Callebaut and Kühne and Nagel as excellent in all ESG components, but the FW Fried, I would suggest that they improve, especially their social and governance factors. And me, as Tony Chocolonely, if I was effectively using this company, because remember, I don't know if they use this particular company. This is a little bit of educated guessing. I would probably put it in my strategy to first have a conversation with the supplier to see how we could improve those indicators. And if they don't improve in a certain time, then I would probably suggest that we move to a different supplier of services in this case. I would really appreciate it if we go to one last question. Wait, not yet. So quickly back to the Menti. Now that we've had this very long conversation that I think is running a bit long, how comfortable are you now with what you know about your own supply chain? Very comfortable. Comfortable.
Sorry,
go ahead. No, go ahead.
Oh no, I was just going to give you a time check. That was all very well. Everyone was doing these numbers. You've got 5 minutes left.
Yeah. So maybe while they're answering, I don't know if they have any questions in the chat that we can address.
No questions so far.
Mm-hmm.
Not currently, no. So if you do have questions, please do pop them into the chat, or any thoughts on this topic, please do share.
All right, so out of the 5 people, we have one company is super comfortable with the information they have on their own supply chain. There's 2 that are comfortable and 2 that are not very comfortable. Interestingly enough, nobody's like, please help, save me.
We still have 16 attendees.
Mm-hmm. We have 13 people in Menti. Remember that if you're a bit late, you can always use menti.com and use this code up the top to join and put your answers. I'm going to give you 1 more minute, and then we're going to jump back to the presentation for you to have like a code where if you need any help, you can just either drop me an email or you can book directly through the QR code free session where we can talk more about your supply chain. Anybody else who wants to answer this? Look, it's very interesting that it's like so, like
evenly spread.
Yes, exactly. Very evenly spread.
So with a few minutes to go, if you've got any questions, please do pop them into the chat. And so we get them answered before we hit the past. So if you want to move back then, Vero.
Yeah. Well, Q&A, and of course, feel free. And you can also like scan the code to book time, or you can text me at Valumia at vero@valumia.com for any questions, any thoughts, any help, anything at all that you need. And with that, I'm ready. I talk too much.
No, that was incredibly helpful. Thank you so much. It's incredibly insightful, but I think having a case study and bringing it to life is what's really, really helpful. Valumia is an awesome tool. And for those of you on the call, we are very keen for people to use Valumia and then hold those records, as Vero said, in a centralized pace on BuyingStation. And if you can go to the next slide, please. We have a next one along. There we go. We've got a couple of live demos coming up for BuyingStation on the 15th of July next week and the 31st of July. We would love for you to hop on, have a look, see where you can store the information from Valumia. But please do reach out to Vero. What we'll do is we'll send everybody after this Vero's details and a link to the website. Have a look at that. And yeah, give it a go. I think it's incredibly important, going back to your 80-20 rule, Vero, to really understand your top suppliers is critical, especially in the world we are in currently with all the conflicts that are happening as well, especially around the world. I think it's important to understand and map out those supply chains. And on that note, I don't think we have any further questions that have come up at all. So hopefully everybody's enjoyed their lunch, found the session helpful and interesting. Thank you very, very much. We will send out a document capturing the key takeaways from today's session. Please do share it with your colleagues and anybody else that you think might be interested to learn about disruption in supply chains. But thank you very much for your time. Have a lovely rest of the day.